Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain On the Ropes. This movie tells the story of two brothers named John and Lee, who fight for the highest power of a criminal organization to replace their father's position, who died suddenly. What is the story of the competition between them, and who finally succeeded in inheriting their father's position? Let's find out in On the Ropes. On the Ropes tells the story of two boys named Lee and John fighting in the ring. John and Lee were brothers, and the fight was witnessed by their adoptive father, nicknamed the Old Man. Old Man is a mafia boss who is most respected because he has considerable power and has many henchmen who are loyal to him. Several years later, John and Lee, who are now adults, are seen carrying out their duties to monitor the movements of a man named Mark Biggs, who was in the room. When Biggs was about to do it with a woman prostitute, John and Lee immediately ambushed and pointed a gun at him. John and Lee accused Biggs of reporting their criminal operations to the police, which resulted in the deaths of several of their men. But Biggs denied the allegations and said that the person who leaked the information may have come from within the criminal organization. When the three of them were arguing, suddenly the woman pointed a gun at them and threatened them to hand over their wallets, then rushed away from there. The three then laughed at the woman's behavior. But then, John and Lee got into a fierce battle with Biggs. After successfully dropping Biggs, Lee then asked who the person who had leaked their information to the police was. However, instead of answering Lee's question, Biggs mocked Lee by calling him a coward. Lee, who did not accept being called that, then killed Biggs. While returning to base, John and Lee receive a reprimand from the Old Man for causing trouble with Bruno, a mob boss. Old Man even harshly reprimanded Lee for rashly killing Biggs, who was one of the most important henchmen in the criminal organization led by Bruno. Old Man then mentions the problems in the criminal organization he leads, which has caused a lot of chaos because of the traitor. Old Man, who feels that his life will not be long, then chooses John as his heir, who will lead the criminal organization. Hearing this, Lee, annoyed and disappointed, opposed Old Man's decision because Lee thought he contributed more to the organization than John. However, Old Man's decision to appoint John as the new leader is unanimous and cannot be contested. The next day, a police detective named Stern is investigating the case of Biggs' death and finds out about John and Lee, who came to see Biggs before his death after they were both seen on CCTV camera footage at the venue. Concluding that John and Lee were the ones who killed Biggs, Detective Stern rushed to investigate the two of them. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Lee is torturing one of his subordinates, Ricky, whom he considers a traitor. John tries to defend Ricky because Lee's accusations against Ricky have yet to be proven. But Lee paid no heed to John's words and said that there was no other way to find out the truth than by using force. Despite the painful torture, Ricky still denies Lee's accusations of being a traitor. Bruno then arrives and asks Lee and John responsible for killing Biggs. Bruno demands to meet the Old Man to solve the problem, but Lee punches Bruno in the face and injures his eye. Lee and Bruno almost got into a fight, before Bruno and his henchmen chose to leave because they were outnumbered. After that, John secretly meets Detective Stern, who asks John to stay alert. John then goes to meet his girlfriend, who is a ballerina named Chloe. When Chloe is practicing ballet, she forces John to practice with her. Elsewhere, Lee is with one of his best henchmen, a man named Aristo, and tells about the Old Man who has appointed John as his successor. Lee and Aristo then head to the scene of a street fight, where Lee joins the fight to vent all his frustration and disappointment on Old Man over John's appointment as the new leader. Bruno finally meets Old Man and complains about John and Lee's actions that had killed Biggs. Apparently, the problem of traitors in the criminal organization led by the Old Man has spread, so Bruno is having a hard time doing business because of it. Bruno then asked Old Man to solve the problem so that their business would not be disrupted. But what angered Bruno the most was that Lee had punched him in the left eye. Hearing all of Bruno's complaints, Old Man only said that he would soon retire and hand over his power to John, who he considered more worthy of being a leader than Lee, who was easily angered. Hearing that, Bruno didn't say anything even though he seemed to disagree with Old Man's decision, especially when Bruno found out that Old Man was seriously ill. Not wanting to argue further, Bruno decided to leave. Shortly afterward, Bruno got a call from Lee, asking Bruno to come to a bar, where he asked Bruno to work with him. Meanwhile, John, who returns to his apartment, tells Chloe about him being appointed as Old Man's successor. But Chloe doesn't agree with that, and she angrily rushes off and leaves John. The next morning, John gets word from Lee about the Old Man who has passed away. Long story short, John was on the beach carrying a jar containing Old Man's cremated ashes. Lee, who was next to John, told him to make changes to make the organization thrive. However, John refused because Lee always prioritized violence to solve every problem. Lee, who looked annoyed, then immediately left John. That evening, Lee throws a party to celebrate John's coronation as the organization's new leader. Lee purposely got John heavily drunk and trapped him. While John is in the toilet, he is attacked by several of Bruno's henchmen, who have teamed up with Lee to kill John. However, despite being drunk, John could defeat them all with ease. Lee, who acted as if he didn't know about the attack, then asked John to immediately run away from there. However, once they get outside the bar, Lee shoots John instead and snatches the necklace the old man gave him from his neck. After that, Detective Stern comes to see Chloe and tells the news about John, who was shot and is now being treated at the hospital. In the hospital, John finally woke up and realized that his hands were handcuffed. The doctor who treated John said that he survived because the bullet did not injure his vital organs. On the other hand, knowing that John is still alive, Lee orders Aristo to kill John in the hospital. John, who saw Aristo's arrival, then pretended to be unconscious. Aristo then goes into John's treatment room and gets into a fierce fight. Although not fully recovered from the gunshot wound John suffered, he was able to kill Aristo. Meanwhile, Bruno looks annoyed that Lee didn't shoot John in the head, so he is still alive now. Bruno then tortures Ricky to dig up information about John. After getting the desired information, Bruno then ordered his subordinate named Tony to kill Ricky. After that, Bruno ordered all his henchmen to find John's whereabouts and kill him. John managed to escape from the hospital, then returned to his apartment to get the weapon he needed, then rushed to meet Chloe in the dance studio. At the same time, Bruno's henchmen are about to raid the dance studio where Chloe is practicing after receiving this information from Ricky. However, because John was already there, John and Bruno's henchmen had a fierce battle ensued. With a fairly great fighting ability, John has no difficulty facing Bruno's henchmen and can defeat them alone. John immediately saves Chloe and rushes out of there in a taxi. However, Chloe, who was still annoyed with John, then decided to get off in the middle of the road. John began to hunt Bruno and his henchmen one by one. First, John visits Tony in a hotel room and then kills him after receiving information about Bruno's whereabouts. After that, John came to Bruno and killed him without a second thought, then went to the shore to reflect for a moment. Detective Stern then came to see John with a file regarding the collaboration between Bruno and Lee to get rid of John from the criminal organization. Old Man's death was not due to his illness, but because he was killed by Lee. However, even more astonishing was that the traitor who had reported the criminal operation to the police was the Old Man himself. Old Man does this to save himself and wants to put all the blame on John as the new leader of the organization. It turns out that Old Man had been using them all for his own benefit. Detective Stern then offers John protection and complete freedom if John is willing to help him eliminate all these criminal organizations. John then contacts Lee and reveals that the traitor is Old Man himself. John then informs Lee that the police are now going to his place. Lee, who heard this, instead challenged John to fight one-on-one with him. John finally fulfills Lee's challenge and comes to meet him. He then tells Lee that the Old Man has only been using them, and John wants to end this and doesn't want to fight Lee. But Lee still insists on fighting with John and even points a gun at him so that he is willing to accept the challenge. John was forced to comply with Lee's wishes, and they fought in the ring, repeating their fight when they were teenagers. Even though their fight was quite fierce, John turned out to have a greater fighting ability than Lee, so John was able to overthrow him. When Lee was about to kill John using a gun hidden under the ring, John had already anticipated this and killed Lee first. Sometime after the incident, John meets Detective Stern at a bar, where he is very grateful to John for helping him take down the criminal organization. The film ends by showing John going to the dance studio to meet Chloe, who is practicing. The moral that can be learned from this movie is, betrayal will not lead to anything but suffering and misery. Moreover, betrayal is an act that is very shameful and immoral, because it can cause a very big bad impact on many people,